All right, I'm back. I wanted to make this a short video. I'm sure probably do a live maybe Saturday or Sunday or something like that. Um, I just- it's just a few things I wanted to say. Just a few things I wanted to say. Obviously, the big news: Carson Beck, after initially stating that he was going to the NFL draft, has now entered his name in the transfer portal, and there are some Kane fans that are making a case for him. Now, I don't have a problem with making a case for Carson Beck. I really don't. All right. My pushback is this, right? Because again, one of the things that myself, Cuban, that's my daughter's toy going off back there. I don't know why. Um, you turn it off. That scared me. Anyway, myself, Cuban, rent free, South Coast, Rocky, others. We've sat here and listened to individuals say one thing and then come back and contradict it, right? So this is the latest greatest contradiction, right? The latest greatest contradiction now is we don't need to run that same offense that we ran with Cam Ward. Turn around, hand the ball off, play great defense, and boom, our dreams will come true. Now, y'all spent the entire offseason running a talking point, right? And that talking point was, well, see, Mario proved you guys wrong. Y'all said he wouldn't adopt the air raid, and boom, look, there's the air raid. So if you adopted it, that means that you are going to continue to do it. That means you're going to recruit. You're going to bring talent in to run said system. Am I correct? It was the whole reason to bring in Cam Ward. So I'm also hearing, well, we don't have to expect for the next quarterback to be Cam Ward. Why not? Why not? Why should we lower expectations? Why should we give rival fans, and I'll include myself in that because I felt, because me, myself, and others, but I'm gonna speak for myself. I felt like Cam Ward elevated and covered up a lot of deficiencies on the team. Fine. But prove us wrong. Do it again. Now, obviously, Quinn Ewers is another name that's being, it was floating around. He hasn't officially entered the portal or anything like that. I don't think, obviously, you're starting, right? You have today is Friday, so you have a game tonight against Ohio State. So whether it's in the back of your mind or whatever the situation is, now's not the time to declare or to say that you're going to enter the portal because you got a lot of work to do, right? You can get Texas's first national title since 2005, right? So a lot riding on that. But why? If a quarterback is coming to the University of Miami, I saw J.D. Pickle say this. J.D. Pickle said Cam Ward has made Miami an attractive location for transfer portal quarterbacks. So, if let's just say that's a true statement, which I'll say it is. It's an attractive spot because they gave Cam Ward full autonomy of the offense. If Cam Ward saw something, if he saw a potential mismatch that he could take advantage of, he had full autonomy to check out of the play and go to a play that he felt was the best play to go to. So that's what makes this appealing. So to come back and to say that the next quarterback, oh, well, you're not going to have the same free reign as Cam Ward, to me, that doesn't make Miami as appealing. Which makes this talking point of we'll just go back to running the football and, hopefully we can rebuild the defense and we'll go from there. No. Because for some reason it's lost on people, not all people, But the dynamic nature of Cam Ward, the Cam Ward taking advantage of every single, anytime a team made a mistake, he made them pay for it, which meant that the opposition had to be on their P's and Q's. And in many games this season, they weren't. And even when they were on their P's and Q's, Cam Ward still made you pay. So we won 10 games with that. And obviously, we know how the defense, played and all that stuff like that. But that made Miami attractive. It was good talking about, we had a 1,000-yard receiver for the second consecutive year in a row, right? It was good talking about Jacoby George. It was good Isaiah Horton was thought of enough that Kalen DeBoer wanted to bring him to Alabama, because obviously Kalen DeBoer, we understood with the Penix, the McMillan, the Roma Dunzier, and the Jalen Pope. We understand what that trio of receivers did, right? So that makes it appealing. So Shannon Dawson just coordinated the #1 offense in the entire college football. For his resume, wouldn't he want a repeat performance of that? Because now the chips are, okay, you got Cam Ward to the first round, top 5 pick. All right, cool, Shannon, that's nice. But to do it twice, now again, I don't know if Shannon Dawson's going to stay, but I'm just speaking that he's going to be here. If you do that twice, your biggest job, or you're not going to be looking to go to Rice, that puts you in contention for some of these Power 4 jobs, where you really can make the money, get the staff, all that stuff that you need to expedite this particular process. So no, I don't stand behind this adage of, well, we can just go back to the 4 yards in a cloud of dust offense, because we shouldn't expect for the next quarterback to be Cam Ward. Why not? Why not? There was a Twitter, well, I ain't gonna say it was an exchange, but I put on Twitter yesterday because and it's not just Mario fans, it's Kane fans in general. I'm not like that, because my mindset is simply this. The SEC did what every other conference didn't do. The SEC didn't put all of their money in one team or 2 teams to be the faces of their conference. For example, the Pac-12, before it dissolved, it was USC. Even though Oregon made a push and Oregon ended up becoming the face of that conference, it was still about, well, wait until USC wakes up. Then we'll see how good Oregon is. The Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma. Even though you had teams like TCU and Baylor and even Oklahoma State that were more consistent, more so than Texas was in many aspects, but it was still Texas, Oklahoma. Obviously, the big team was Ohio State, and I guess you could throw Michigan in there, even though you had a team like Wisconsin that was dominating their side of the bracket, even though the argument was, well, they didn't have to play Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State every year. They didn't have to play them every year, so they pretty much got a free ride. And then obviously the ACC, we know that story. Miami was brought to the ACC, and the ACC's plan was for Miami and Florida State to be the faces of the conference and to go to the ACC title game. They put us in different divisions so they would get that matchup. Never got it. Still waiting on it. Never got it. Right? But the SEC, even the fans, people say, I'm a fan of the SEC. SEC team playing, hey, that's who I'm going for. And this is Bama fans, LSU fans, Florida fans. So I don't have to go back down that road, right? So that's what they did. And so they're reaping the benefits of that by preseason rankings, by this perception, and obviously perception is reality in many cases, that this is the best conference, right? And they have accolades to back that up. from a conference perspective, but we all know that we're talking about a top heavy conference, right? We're talking about a conference that has pretty much been dominated by the University of Alabama, even though you had LSU get, 3 natties in there. You had Florida get 2 natties. Auburn got a natty and then another natty appearance. And then obviously Georgia got 2 natties. But if you look at those teams, those are the teams that have gotten the most talent for the most part. And they probably more so than not have the best overall winning percentage. If we're talking about when this SEC dominance started, which was, I guess, 2006. Yeah, 2006. So, and obviously Florida's win percentage has obviously, dipped down after Urban Meyer left and even after Dan Mullen left. But you get the point that I'm making, right? So I say all to say this. Case in point, there are fans that are saying, well, look at Beck's numbers in the SEC, so imagine what he would do in the ACC. So I'm like, y'all can't have it both ways. Because if you're to say the SEC is top heavy, and he's playing for one of the top heavy teams, essentially what you're saying is he's getting those numbers against teams that are inferior in talent. But you're also trying to say that those inferior SEC teams are better than the ACC teams over here, which you turn around and you argue. So you can't have it both ways. So which is it? Is the SEC as good as they say they are? Which would give credence to your point of, well, let's multiply Carson Beck's numbers by a point like 1.5. Not gonna say by 2, so 1.5, right? Let's multiply his numbers by that. But you're not saying that. You're saying that the conference is overrated. It's top heavy. It's not as good top to bottom as they say they are. So if you're going to stand on that side, then you can't sit up here and say that Carson Beck's numbers are going to be, I'm not going to use the word exponentially, that they're going to be much better than the numbers that he already has. So which side of the street are you going to stand on? You stand on the side of the street that the SEC is what they say they are. So we can say you put Carson Beck on a Miami team and those numbers are going to look much better. Or the SEC is overrated. Preseason polls put them in a particular sphere that they don't necessarily deserve. And Carson Beck's numbers that he had at Georgia will essentially be the same numbers that he had at Miami, which in general, I don't necessarily know if that moves the needle enough, so to speak, because we watched Cam Ward just, go ballistic. And obviously, again, like I say, the defense was the defense, right? Even though regardless of what the overall ranking was, I did a video about that, 4 things that I look at to say whether or not a defense is worthy of a ranking, and that was third down, red zone, scoring, and then turnovers. And when you add all 4 of those particular metrics up, the number was in the 50s, which when you look at TV, that's what you saw. When you actually watch actual games, and obviously you could throw missed tackles in there as a statistic, just some of the other things. But regardless of that, right? Carson Beck is not a bad quarterback. I'm not going to say he's a bad quarterback, but again, we just had Cam Ward. And me being a fan and seeing how close we were to achieving something that we've only achieved one time previously, I'm not here to join the bandwagon of, hey, we can just go back to running the football. We got Jordan Lyle. We got Mark Fletcher back, Pringle, all that stuff like that. No. Again, my thing is this. If C.J. Daniels is this big-time wide receiver get, if JoJo Trader is the next man up, if Elijah Lofton is the next man up, in terms of, when I say next man up, I'm not talking about in terms of depth chart. I'm talking about in terms of being put into a particular sphere of Miami Hurricane great players. then roll the ball out on the field and let them go crazy. Let them go crazy. Set the expectations high. Set the expectations high that JoJo Trader comes in next year, 65 catches, 950 yards, 8 touchdowns. Elijah Lofton, 40 catches, 640 yards, 10 touchdowns, red zone opportunity. CJ Daniels, you say that LSU didn't use you correctly. All right, boom. 65 catches, 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. All right? Carson Beck, you come in the building, I believe, what, you were 28-12 this year? Put up Cam Ward numbers. Show us that this was not a facade last year. Well, this year. Show us it wasn't a facade. Shannon Dawson, show us this wasn't a facade. So again, like I say, you bring Carson Beck in, and you give him the same, you give him the, again, going back to J.D. Pickle, if Cam Ward has made this an attractive situation for portal quarterbacks, then we have to understand everything that made it attractive. Now, again, I would say this, it's not as attractive now as it was when Cam Ward got here because you have a lot of uncertainty, right? You don't have Mr. Reliable and Xavier Restrepo. He was uberly talented, but he got in his own way a lot. Jacoby George. We don't necessarily have that, right? Elijah Lofton can be good, but when I said when me and Cuban, linked up the other day, I said that fully healthy, Elijah Arroyo was the most complete tight end that we've had here since Kellen Winslow Jr. And when I say complete, I'm talking about all aspects, catching, blocking, every single thing. We've had some tight ends that were good at others. And obviously we can throw Brevin Jordan in there, but Brevin Jordan was not as fast. He's a good blocker, could catch the football, but Elijah Arroyo just is talent, size, like all this stuff. And again, we're talking about a man that came off of like a knee injury and they got him 21 miles per hour. So imagine what it was prior to the injury. A freak athlete. I mean, in every stretch, right? So Elijah Lofton, you're up next. But that's a hard sell. Right? It's a hard sell. You don't have the sell from Cam Ward of you got a 1,000-yard receiver coming back. You have a 800-yard receiver in Sam Brown. Sam Brown came in the second window. So you had a 600-yard receiver in Jacoby George. You had a 1,000-yard receiver in Xavier Restrepo. Elijah Arroyo was coming back fully healthy, right? But we didn't necessarily know what we were getting with Arroyo, right? Because some people had kind of written him off due to the injury. So you don't have that seal. Basically what you have is Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lau, a decent offensive line. I'll say good offensive line. I go a little bit above decent. But it's not the same selling point. The only thing that would be similar, again, like I say, if Shannon Dawson just says, hey, look, which this has to be a Mario call, at the end of the day, is I'm gonna give you full range to the offense. Audible out if you don't, if you like something else, audible out of it. But again, you have to look at what was going on, right? You got Xavier Restrepo, high IQ player, right? So not saying that the guys that are coming in are not as high IQ as Xavier Restrepo. I'm not going to say that. But having him on the field makes those checks and calls that much easier, right? Makes things that much easier. And on top of that, y'all are talking about Carson Beck. Carson Beck won't even be a participant in the spring. So, I mean, that's what's really kind of throwing me about these people showing this love and admiration. It's like, bro, he's not going to be a participant in the spring. We need somebody that's going to be here in the spring, somebody that's going to be here in the spring, that's going to be out there gaining reps and all this stuff like this. Now, mental reps are cool, but actually putting it into action, that's what we need. at the end of the day. Because Carson Beck is not, and again, we don't know how he's gonna, come back from the injury that he sustained. What will be there. But again, not a bad issue. I mean, not a bad guy to have. You know what I mean? If that's where the chips, end up falling. But like I said, I'm not going to sit up here and just concede and say, oh well, the next guy we get is it's not gonna be as good as Cam Ward. Why not? Why can't he be? What's preventing him from being that good? Obviously, again, we know some of the things that Cam Ward did were the improvising, right? Those are improv plays. Obviously, the big play he made to Riley Williams, the rolling out of the pocket against Florida, finding Jacoby George in the back of the end zone, and, other plays that he made, right? Okay, let's say that we don't get those plays. But you don't need those particular plays to still throw for 32 or 35 plus touchdowns and 38, close to 4,000 yards. You don't need those plays to do that. So like I said, I mean that's what I'm expecting. And there's one other thing I'm going to say about this, and then I'm going to go over to the defense for just a quick second. ACC has won 3 national titles in 15 years, right? Florida State won 2013 prior to the playoffs, and then Clemson won the other 2. Now, what's so unique about those 3 teams? They all 3 had exceptional quarterbacks. Now, we can say we won about Jameis, and I personally felt that Jimbo Fisher and staff did a good job with Jameis his freshman year by not putting a whole lot on their plate because they had Devontae Freeman. But when need be, Jameis, he took care of business, right? And obviously we understood what Deshaun Watson did against Alabama. And then we saw what a true freshman in Trevor Lawrence did against Alabama. We saw what he did the rest of his collegiate career, just an exceptional quarterback, right? So the objective is national title. And I see individuals were looking at it from the vantage point of because Notre Dame won last night, right? Riley Leonard wasn't by any stretch exceptional in terms of just his play. Not even last night, but even during the season. It wasn't exceptional. But based on the way Notre Dame team was built, he was good enough for that, right? He was good enough for that. He was an exceptional quarterback in that particular offense that he was in. So when we look at ACC teams and look at the way that they're constructed, and like I say, obviously we recruited better. We have some better talent based on paper. Now, how that talent translates to the field over the next 2 seasons or so, that's up for, that's in the clouds, right? But we don't need to take our foot off this aspect of exceptional quarterback. Too many people are living in this 2001 fantasy. Even Alabama of our teams, right? Alabama, after the Jalen Hurts situation, Alabama switched up their whole philosophy and said, look, we airing this thing out. Now, Mac Jones was an exceptional quarterback, but he still threw for a crap ton of touchdowns. Tua threw for crap ton of touchdowns. Bryce Young ended up winning a Heisman, threw a crap ton of touchdowns. So even they went as far as to say, look, we need some exceptional quarterback play. Now Georgia, they, I think they're gonna end up moving in that direction because I think the young man Gunnar Stockton or Stockham or whatever his name is, they probably may put a little bit more on his plate. So they may start to get exceptional, try to do some things like that as well because it's so hard to play just lights out defense these days with the way that offenses are able to manipulate things, and when you especially start getting these matchups where you have these equally as good of coaches or maybe better coaches, then you're gonna fall back on your exceptional players. And what better position to have an exceptional player than a quarterback position? So like I said, me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, me personally, whoever is the quarterback, whether it's Emory, whether it's Luke Nickel, whether it's Carson Beck, whether it's Quinn Ewers, or whether it's some unnamed guy. Yes, I'm expecting for us to have another top 10 offense next year. Because once you set that standard, once you set that benchmark, you can't go back. And again, going back in history, and I think most people know this, is like one side of the ball will be good and the other side will be bad. So now it's like the defense will be really good next year, then the offense will take a step back. No. I'm not accepting that. But anyway, get over to the defense side of the ball for a second, all right? Shout out to Cuban. Speaking of that, Cuban, I know you're going to watch this video. My supervisor told me that I was the Anthony Edwards of our department. And when he said that, he dropped his head, shook in disappointment, and walked off. So I've been messed up by that all day. He called me the Anthony Edwards of the department, and he shook his head. And some of my coworkers, they shook their head too, like, dang, that's messed up, man. Man said you the Anthony Edwards of the department. So, but anyway, Cuban made a very interesting comment some weeks back in terms of Mario's hiring of coordinators and even position coaches, right? Where he talked about Mario needs to hire guys that want his job. Now, when he said that, the first name that popped in my head was Jeremy Pruitt. Because I remember after Jeremy Pruitt helped Florida State win a national title, he left the following year and went to the University of Georgia, and reports came out that he essentially was making a play for Mark Richt's job. So much so that he was driving a wedge in the team, trying to garner support from players to get Mark Richt out of there. Now, obviously, again, this was 2014, so this was 2 years before Georgia officially made the commitment to say, hey, look, Mark Richt, we're trying to get somewhere now. So we're bringing in Kirby Smart. So Jeremy Pruitt made that play 2 years. So now we're in a very interesting place right now. We're fresh off with 10 wins, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it because of the way the season ended, right? Cam Ward took some unneeded scrutiny from fans and even media outlets, and the head coach just did nothing to soften this by any stretch. But again, I don't care about that. It's old news. But the interesting situation right now is that if you hire someone that wants your job, how bad do they want your job? Think about this. Miami is a premier situation, right? NIL, talent right down the street, all the good stuff like that, right? So if you bring in an established guy who's looking to get, another gig or whatever the situation is, and they've had success somewhere else under a certain way, and obviously the thing, basically the mindset is Mario wants things a certain way. So some of the names that people are throwing out, I don't see those names as viable options. I really don't, because I don't think these guys are going to do the go along and get along. Now, again, some names have been, leaked, and as people say, well, this is by design. Like Mario is this some type of, chess master. Like, oh, see, he throws it out there, and he's going in a completely different direction. At this particular point, bro, you're on your third defensive coordinator in 4 seasons. So obviously this doesn't work, right? But people are still gonna build a suspension. Well, you know how Mario is. He's gonna do this. It's like, bro, nobody cares. I don't care anymore. You know what I mean? I don't care. But like I said, I would be hard pressed to see him hiring someone that is just an alpha in all aspects. And we see that Coach Joe recently just took a job at University of Arizona. So good luck to him. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is my gripe about it, right? Lance Guidry got fired. Rightfully so. Even though I felt like he should have been given another year because of the first year, but people, break down film and say, this, that, and stuff. And I'm gonna tell you something funny that I heard that made absolutely no sense. But again, it goes back to we're dealing with some hypocrites here. Because last year was Lance Guidry's calling a defense that fits the personnel on the field, and now this year he's calling a defense that does not fit the personnel on the field. And I'm thinking to myself, how is that possible? How last year the defense you call it fits the personnel, but this year it doesn't fit the personnel? Like, I don't. I guess that can happen. Again, I guess. I mean, again, I'm listening to individuals that they had a tendency to fabricate things, right? So I mean, I don't know. I have to take it as the gospel, so to speak. But there were 4 NFL guys on that staff last year with Lance Guidry. You got one man that played the game at the highest of high levels, ended up getting a gold jacket for it. You got another defensive line coach that played in the league, became somewhat of a fan favorite because, hey, he played with Sean Taylor in Washington. Derek Nichols wasn't in the NFL very long, but he went to the NFL. Chavis Jackson went to the NFL. So I'm perplexed as I'm sitting here thinking, like, you got, and again, just because you went to the NFL, that does not mean that you know how to coach or teach players the game, right? Cool, fine. But you're working for a person on the side of the ball who has started at the lowest of low levels, high school, and talked about ways of teaching players stuff. So I'm just hard pressed trying to blame Lance Guidry for all of this. One thing I will blame Lance Guidry for is the safety play. I have to, because it's your position group. And from Cam Kitchen to James Williams to Jaden Harris to Mish Powell this year, and even some of the other guys that came in, I didn't see anything. And based on the defense that you ran, they were supposed to be the absolute erasers. They were supposed to do a lot in this defense, and they did do a lot, but they just weren't up to the task to do it for whatever reason, whether it was just they weren't athletic enough to do it or coaching or however the situation is, right? But at this point, it's 4 guys that played in the NFL. Y'all watch film, y'all have meetings, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, there's no way that there wasn't anything conveyed to Lance Guidry to maybe make some improvements to this, right? And the reason I'm saying this is because I feel like as bad as the unit was collectively, all of y'all should be gone. Because year 1, when it was bad, everybody left except for Coach Joe. Everyone was asked to leave. But somehow, some way, this year and again, it's still relatively early, right? And there are whispers about, guys looking to leave and stuff like that. So, I mean, we're still very early, even though, it'll be time for spring football before we know it. You know what I mean? So there's still a lot of moving pieces. NFL teams are going to start filling out staffs, and once the season is fully concluded, then maybe coaches may be open to more interviews and stuff like that. So they don't they're not game prepping and stuff like that. So so you have that, right? But like I said, I just don't see an alpha walking in this room. And based on some of the names that, have been floated out, it's like, it's got along the same lines as like a Lance Guidry in terms of like going from my current spot to Miami is considered a step up the ladder. It's not a lateral move, you know what I mean? But a name that I personally would like, and I know he had a rough year at UNC this year, was, like Geoff Collins. I think Geoff Collins is a good defensive coordinator, has coached some very good units and stuff like that. And I don't think he's one of those names, one of those old names, like people bringing up Muschamp and Mel Tucker. And I'm like, first of all, I'm like, why are y'all bringing up Mel Tucker? Like, Mel Tucker wasn't this lights out defensive coordinator, you know what I mean? And I think I know some people still like, throwing, Schumann and stuff out there. But I don't see it. I could be surprised, but as it currently sits, I just don't see this alpha being hired. You know what I mean? A person that is going to stand up and be like, hey, look, this is BS, and we're going to do it like this, right? Because, again, like I said, Jerry Pruitt did it to Mark Richt, and even Manny Diaz did it to Mark Richt, right? And there's another reason why I didn't like Manny, because Manny took shots at Mark Richt, underhanded shots. And this man literally was your best reference, your best referral that you could get for the Miami job. But that's water under the bridge. But all in all, man. Oh yeah, it's the last thing, right? The 3-year records. Roughly the same for Manny, Richt, Golden, and Randy. But I see people trying to throw something in there and say, well, no. We won 10 games this year. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, Randy won 9 games year 3. Al Golden won 9 games year 3. There were games where they could have, got that 10th win. Mark Richt, I don't really see a situation where he could have got 10 wins that year because the quarterback situation was so atrocious. And then, obviously, we understood what happened to Manny Diaz that particular year. You lose your starting quarterback. You lose your top 2 running backs. You lose some offensive line pieces. You lose a safety to injury. Then you lose another safety to just, I guess, his confidence was just completely gone. And then just, but all in all, you were able to put it together. And I'm confident in saying that if D'Eriq King doesn't get hurt and Cam and Don Chaney don't get hurt, I feel comfortable in saying that in 2021, we beat Virginia. We're not waiting for a field goal to win that game. And obviously we beat Florida State. Right? And probably win another game as well. Right? We lost at UNC that year too on the last second place. So, I mean, you could argue that Manny Diaz could have won 10 games his 3rd year. So, I mean, like, the stuff is like, think about this for a second. I'm going to get out of here. We won a lot of close games this year. And it just goes to show you how things can happen, how luck and how a play here or a play there can decide a ball game. Because we can literally look and say that in 2021, there were some games that, like I say, the Virginia game, we lose that game because of a missed field goal. UNC game, we lose that game throwing an interception when we were going down the field to take the lead, I believe. And then obviously the Florida State game, where if we don't allow for them to get that conversion, the game is over. So it just goes to show how close these things really are. You know what I mean? But all in all, man, that's all I wanted, man. This video actually went over a little bit longer than I wanted to go over, but, sometimes I kind of go off on tangents and certain things. But all in all, man, if we get Carson back, great. If we don't, I mean, it is what it is. But my expectation does not change. We had the number 1 offense this year, and I want another top. I go top 15. I want a top 15. No, I want a top 10 offense next year as well. Make it happen. Because y'all said Mario adopted the air raid. He did something that we said he wouldn't do. So adopt it again next year. And continue to adopt it moving forward. Because the air raid and this particular concept, Cam Ward and the threat of the pass, open things up for the run game. Open things up for the run game. But with that being said, man, I'm going to steal something from, No, I ain't going to steal it. I'm going to let him have it. With that being said, man, peace.